Are we ready to rock and roll? I get us started. Awesome. Call to order. Do I have to do this?
Yes.
Oh, meeting in order.
Excellent.
What are we doing? Pledge allegiance? Awesome.
Roll call first, right?
Whichever. Yeah. Roll call. Okay.
Chair Rydell. Vice Chair Shibahara.
Here.
Director Wheeler. Director Johnston. Director Berman. Director Martinez.
Here.
Director Walper.
Here.
Elena Snyder.
Here.
I see her. Jody Bever. Here. Melanie Wagner. Lindsay Park.
Here.
Ralph Branson.
Here.
Carol Kaiser-Worthy.
Here.
And Kendra Perkins. We have a quorum.
Okay, pledge allegiance.
Go. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Awesome. Thank you everybody for being here. I'm so excited that we've got enough of us to do some work. Okay, Christina, I think are you first on the agenda?
I am, thank you. And I also am very excited to have a quorum here today. Going to start by going over just some questions and answers from the first meeting and then follow up to some questions that were emailed to me. One of the first things, oh, and I can't see this. You guys can't see that very well up there. Let me see if I can move that real quick. I wanted to have a little more discussion about Function 2510 and Function 2520. If you remembered, there was some question about the increase between last year and this year with me separating out the departments of operations and fiscal services. So you can see here, it's broken out in two different columns. This year, this budget, the proposed budget of the 22-23, and the adopted budget of 21-22. And you could see 2510 is where the adopted budget was. And then you could see the broken out of 2510 and 2520. That's the total budget. And now talk about FTE. And I talked a little bit about this, that with creating this department, we did move some of the FTE around so that Mike is now under this and his executive assistant is under this. So that's the 1.5 FTE. And the 1.9 FTE that was there is now moved down to 2520. And then one thing that wasn't mentioned at the last meeting is we are asking for an additional 0.75 for the fiscal services department that will be funded with the additional money we're getting for fees charged to grants.
So you're saying there's an additional 1.5 salaries for people in here?
Only 0.75.
So the 1.5, what is that? I thought that was where and.
Oh, yes. So, yes, that was, and we'll go down a little bit. So if you go down to the FTE changes, so 2510, 0.75 was moved from 2550, and 0.75 was moved from 2544. And then in the 2520, the 1.95 was moved from 2510, and then we added an additional 0.75 for the accounting clerk. In the budget, when the budget was built, you'll see it as under managerial because that's what the current 0.25 FTE is, but it's going to actually be a full-time classified FTE. So we will adjust that with the after the budget in the new year. And so then the budget that is not payroll, 2510 has 15,000 in this year. Last year it was 77,485, and 2520 has 99,045. So that's an increase of 37,000 in the budget that is not payroll.
Can you remind me the difference between which one's 2510 and which one's
Yeah,
2520?
2520 is finance, fiscal
Finance,
services.
And then 2510
is operations. Mhm. So I'm hoping that kind of clears up some of the differences in the budget amount. Is there any questions about that?
So 21-22, the total between those two categories was the 379, and the total for the 22-23 is going to be 701. That includes the full-time employees plus the additional items that you added in,
Yes,
correct?
yes, exactly.
It is, what we were seeing is about almost 400.
But
Yeah.
it moved, some of
It's-
it moved from us.
elsewhere.
Yeah, some of it is not, only
It's not really an
0.7,
increase, only 37 or something.
yeah, a
thousand.
0.75 increase and then 37,000 increase, yeah,
Okay, that helps.
yeah. Okay,
Thank you.
oops, and I'm gonna
Want me
move.
to move this?
Yes, please.
Tech support, Jody.
Fortunately, no. Oh, did I just change your screen?
I
now?
can go back,
Okay.
you're good. Oh.
Maybe I'm not good at this. I lied. Wait, I
Okay, there,
think we're good now?
yeah,
I'll do it
for this
again,
one.
Maybe, or we'll let Carol do it next time.
And then the next question that was received is how many more years do we pay on the biomass boiler? Our last payment is scheduled 2026-27, so we have 5 more years of payments.
Can you pay that in advance?
If we had the money, we could, yes.
Is there an interest on that?
We do have an interest, yes.
You know what the percentage is?
I don't off the top of my head, no. I believe it's 15,000 a year, but it's a flat rate of interest.
The interest is 15,000 a year?
Okay, this is fixing the pie chart. Thank you, Jody. Yeah, she doesn't know it. And you can see I added the dollar amounts on there to confirm it for you guys, and I did do the math. And I went through all the other pie charts in the book, and I didn't find anything else that wasn't calculating correctly. And this is 100% there. And I'll tell you where it was. It was down in the facilities acquisition and construction. That was at 4% for some reason, and it shouldn't have been, so. And it was just an Excel error. Okay. Oh,
Oh, geez.
and then this is starting the questions that were given to me. Thank you, Lindsay.
Was I the only one? Sorry.
No, I really appreciate it. So the question is there somewhere in the packet that I can tie the beginning fund balance of the 5.4 million in the 2022-23 proposed column? I thought it should tie to the projected column estimated ending fund balance, but it does not. So let me explain this. When we built the budget, it was the proposed beginning fund balance was done in March. And then the projected was updated information that we had as of May 3rd. So that is the difference between the beginning fund balance proposed and the projected ending fund balance. Does that, because we did get additional information since the March. And if you remember, when we're building a budget, we have to use information given at the time.
So at some point that will be adjusted to actual, and right then what we're saying, like right now, like today, even though it's not reflected here, the projected is more 4.9?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
Mhm. We received some information in May regarding, well, April regarding, no, May, regarding our state school fund payment.
And the final information comes in June?
Yeah, once we actually August, we're still paying bills. We're still paying bills all the way through August. So our final number will be August, well, after the auditors are done. We don't really finalize that number until we're proposing so that could be November, December. The next question was also on page C1. It is line 7, admissions, and line 9, fees charged to grants, appear to be new revenue line items. Is this part of the transfers, perhaps? So admissions is it is transferring with the athletics funds. If you remember, we're taking athletics out of the special revenue fund. We're also taking the revenue source that was in there, and we're moving it to the general fund. And then I talked a little bit about it, but the fees charged to grants is indirect charges that we are allowed to charge grants for administrative services. Currently, we're only doing that in our SIA grants. It's part of the built into the SIA grant. And that is how we're asking to pay for the additional 0.75 for the accounting clerk. Any questions about that? Okay, the next question is on page C2, interfund transfers. The question is, there was 1.24 million, and this is an increase of 485,000 compared to last year. Is it typical to swing year over year? It appears these transfers can be largely based and not repeat over year to year. And so my answer is yes, they are project-based, and they may repeat year over year, depending on what is happening at the district during that time. Based upon the information that has happened the last few years, we did do an adjustment to our interfund transfers, one of those being we're removing the athletics transfers, and we're putting that'll be straight in the general fund. We're adding a line for the curriculum adoption. And then with the turf out there, we're also creating a reserve, which is also one of our strategic plans, creating a reserve for our turf replacement. We're creating reserve for our investments to the technology that we've had for our students and staff during the last few years. We've been able to get a lot of new devices, and we want to stay committed to having great technology for our students and staff. And then the added capital improvements, and I'll go more, that also is one of the next questions, so I'll go more into the capital improvements one.
So the tech replacement, that's not necessarily a replacement, or that's replacement plus reserve for tech?
It's basically a replacement. So we're one-to-one Chromebook, and so we figure we need to probably budget replacing 1/3 of that Chromebook fleet every year.
Gotcha. Okay. So it's like this year's replacement, and hopefully every year we're able to have that to keep doing it.
Yes, exactly. And then the next is a little more about that. Is the 275 capital improvements earmarked for anything specific? This is to help us align to our strategic goal of create reserves, develop reserve funds to support the district during economic downturns or when unanticipated expenditures occurs. With the capital projects funds investment into the turf field, the district is wanting to create reserves again to ensure that we have the ability to respond to future facility needs.
Awesome. So not earmarked for anything unless there's emergencies.
Correct.
Perfect.
And then the next, yeah?
So is the turf field $65,000, is that earmarked or not earmarked? That's part of the 275 that's not earmarked?
The turf field is in this year's budget, the 2021, 22.
65,000 that we're putting in reserve each year, so that in 10 to 12 years you need to replace it, is that just?
Oh, yes.
Is it earmarked for turf?
Yes.
Not as in a general fund?
Sorry, yes,
It's got
correct.
its own line item,
Okay.
so it's
Yes.
separate.
I saw it there,
Yeah.
and I wondered, but then I.
Yeah, it's going to be in a different fund. I think the fund is listed there. I didn't list it up there. Yeah,
Great question.
yeah, great. And then this one, you'll see that the question was that it wasn't, in the projected, it wasn't balanced. I missed the athletics line for the 2021-22 proposed. We will be needing to do the transfer to the athletics fund in this year.
That's all.
Yeah, thank you.
That's my accountant brain that wants things to balance.
No, I appreciate that. And then I kind of already talked a little bit about this. There is showing that there is an increase of 23.5% compared to prior year. And you're asking what this is. There was a correction that we found where the transportation coordinator was previously coded to 113. We corrected that and moved that to 114. And then also the 0.75 for the accounting clerk is budgeted there, but that will be a classified position. So that answers that. And you can see in the 113, it is less than in that line. Page 4, 1132, no FTE noted next to salaries, so I'm assuming this was all non-employee coaches, correct? Also notice total function previous year adopted was 0. Was this reported somewhere else? So we kind of touched on this. You're correct, this is coaches stipends, that is what the salary is. In previous years, it was under special revenue fund, and you'll see that on page 42.
Thank you.
And the next question is page 8, 2210. What are some examples of roles that fall into this function? I noticed an FTE increase of 3, and the total function increased by 53% compared to previous years. So I'll tell you what it is. So it is salaries that it's increasing. This current year, we did add 2 additional coaches that was previously, it wasn't new added FTEs, but we had it budgeted as vapor positions. So those are 2 additional coaches that we're going to continue with going into next year. And then we also talked briefly about there was a staffing adjustment to eliminate a TOSA position and add the elementary teaching and learning administrator. So, if you have more additional, like what exactly roles fall into that, I'm going to probably refer to Superintendent Carpenter.
So is this elementary teacher and learning director, is that the position that Berman is going to be taking next year? That's what we're talking about?
Correct.
I guess.
Teacher on special assignment.
So they're not paid as an administrator, but they do some administrative duties.
So the decrease in FTE, but is.
It's an increase, it should be an increase. It was added, you should see an additional 3 FTE, 1 managerial and 2 licensed.
I'm sorry, am I on the wrong?
Page 8.
Maybe I'm on the wrong question. Did I have 2 questions on page 8? Okay, I'm there now. Okay, I was on a question before that I maybe didn't answer, just answered myself. It increased by 3.
Yes.
We're saying that that is due to an increase in a coach?
Yes, an instructional coach.
Oh, gotcha. We're not talking athletics, sorry, we
No.
were just there, so
Yeah.
instructional coaching. Okay.
Correct.
Gotcha. And then just a lot of it's salary increase then after that?
Yes, so
Because of people being shifted to here that were elsewhere?
correct. So we originally, last year, we did have, we had a holding spot of 2 vapor positions that weren't in this function, but that's what we decided to use them for, was this function. So it's not actual added FTE, but it is added to this function. Yeah,
Do you guys know what vapor means?
yeah. I don't know, and I'm sorry.
It's okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So vapor is, we typically, in the budget, try to budget about 2 or 3 extra FTE in the teacher's rank. So if 40 more kindergartners show up, we have the budget authority to like hire a teacher right now. And so that's where we budget a little bit extra, and we call those just vapor positions. And so we took that budget authority of the 2 vapor positions, and it sounds like moved them and filled them with instructional coaches.
Okay.
So I have a question. Hopefully, next year, we're not going to have all this moving around.
Right. Well, the reason why we're moving around is because we have a new budget manager. And every time there's a new budget manager, they see the world differently. And so we're moving the way that the last person saw the world to the way the new person sees the world. And so as long as Christina will hang around for a little bit, it should be less movement.
And I
but-
think with me being here, I will recognize when things change more often, so I'll be able to call it out, whereas I think being the new person, I just saw it the way it should be, and it wasn't as easy to see it adjusting. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
So with me being here and being able to be repeated, it'll be easier for me to come and report saying, this is what we're changing, this is what we're changing.
Good.
Yeah,
Thank
But
you.
it feels like the goal is you're trying to be more transparent and clear on
Exactly.
where the money is being allocated properly. Instead
Yes.
of bigger buckets, we're kind of getting more granular and more specific.
exactly.
Well,
Correct.
not getting so big that we're just confused.
Right,
Yeah.
Right in the middle, just
Yeah.
right.
Just
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
yeah.
So I have a general question.
Yeah.
Because this is my first time going through the budget as the board member. I see that the numbers are, there's a budget, it seems like, per facility, per school, and it has their function and everything. So so let's say that you're projected and we approved a budget, and let's say a specific school doesn't use all their budget in a specific category, what happens to that fund whether it's an expense or it's an income, who uses that money? Is it,
Great
you use
question.
it, you lose it, and it goes back to where?
So first of all, in the general fund, whatever we don't spend out, it becomes our ending fund balance. So the revenues greater than the expenditures, that's what becomes our ending fund balance. At the school level, the school this year did, we gave them an allotment, and they budgeted out how they were going to spend it. So they get to continue using that. If they don't spend it all out, again, it becomes part of our ending fund balance. And as far as our movement, what we can move, as when the board adopts, they give it to us an appropriation level, so we get to stay within instructional support services, community services, debt, and those. So as long as we stay within that allotment, we can transfer from like my department to Ryan's department if that is what is approved by us. But we can't go from my department support services to instructional services without board approval. Does that make sense? So that's where we level, but we give the school their allotments, and that's what they have to spend, and they get to decide how to do that. We don't generally take it away unless we're at that point where we're making budget cuts across the district.
But the next year, we
Yes.
start over.
Correct.
So the money goes back into the pot of the
Correct.
full school district, and then you
Correct.
make a decision. So
Right.
so in a way, that school, if they don't spend it,
They lose
they
it.
do lose it.
Yeah,
In the
in
sense, but
general
it stays
fund,
within the
in the
district.
general fund, if we don't spend our budget, we don't get it. For the next year, we get a whole new amount for the next year.
But we do get to keep as a whole district what's left over.
Yeah,
And that's, at the month, when you hear her monthly board reports, you'll see like we project to end with $4.8 million. That's what we're projecting is gonna be unspent. And so we keep that and then start this next budget, starting with that money.
Starting with that plus whatever
Yes.
other we get, and then
Revenues.
we allocate.
yep, exactly.
Yep.
So when you're starting with such a big surplus this year at 5 million, how do you sustain that budget going forward?
How do we sustain a big
Well-
5 million budget?
So you're, essentially, the budget this year is 40 million, you're only getting like 35 rounding from all the revenue sources, plus you're carrying 5 forward. So if you're gonna spend all 40, I know you have a reserve of 2.7 something, but how do you maintain a $40 million budget and plus next year's increases if you're not gonna roll forward $5 million every year?
Great question. That's the fun of school district budgeting. You hit it right there on the nail. We keep going. I mean, next year, we don't know how much revenue we're going to get at this point because it's a new biennium. So we're going to be working with the state and trying to get as much information with the state and hoping that they understand the same thing that we're hearing, that their inflation is going up. We need more money. We need to fund our, students more. And then we have to make decisions based upon that information that's given to us from the state. So depending on what comes from the state is how we're going to make our decisions moving forward as a district.
So and I know you're new, so maybe someone else knows the answer to this, but historically, is 5 million typical that you've rolled forward in the past, or is it pretty unusual?
That's the high amount. So I think I don't know, we tend to want to have 3 months worth of salaries and bills to be in reserve. So between 12 to 15%, 10 to 15%. So we're at the high point of that right now. I feel good about that, and that's why we're comfortable doing the little bit of a transfer into the reserves going into, you could see that did have that going into next year. But we'll see after that what happens with the state. I don't project that we'll have an ending fund balance of 15% next year.
Our goal has always been historically to be around the 10% range. We're in that 15% mainly because of some of the federal infusion of dollars that we received. And we also try to be mindful because anything that's left over is kind of one-time money. And that's where we have productive conversations with union organizations who try to utilize that unfund balance as opportunity for cost of living increases, salary increases. And so we're trying to be cautious about how we utilize that, because once you incorporate that into wages and personnel, that becomes reoccurring money when the unfund balance, as you know, is really more we can only spend that money once.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are you getting any kind of hint as to what you think is going to be the increase of students for next year?
No, we don't. We're trying to make our best proposals. We are budgeting for 75 kindergartners at each location. That's been historically where we've been the last 2 or 3 years. We are seeing an increase of families who have never been in our school district but are electing to send their kindergarten to virtual schooling options. And so that's something we're trying to consider as well. We're losing our last small class since the 2008 recession, when people kind of moved out and moved closer to their jobs and their cities from the 2008 crash. So our school district is going to get bigger. We're heavy at the bottom right now, kindergarten through 7th grade, and we're light in the 12, 11, and 10th grade, and that's going to start flowing up that
The
way.
reason I ask the question is I'm on the infrastructure committee
Yeah.
for the city,
Yep.
and there's a whole bunch more houses going up.
Yes, please approve them. Yes.
Thank you.
The district is in full support of our community growing. We have the capability to handle it. We've used some of our federal ESSER dollars to purchase 2 portables, so we can now house up to 100 more elementary students into our thing. We're ready for it, and so we just need more sewage. Literally. Literally.
Did you answer all of the pre-submitted questions? Was that the last one?
I think I have more. Hold on. I got
Wait,
locked.
feel free to jump in.
Well, no, but I think it's important. I just want to make sure, as we consider time and everything, that we get through everybody's questions and we leave time for deliberation and stuff. So I just want to make sure everybody's questions, and we'll have to make sure Helena gets heard, because we only see half of her.
No, I can move her back up now. I thought at least we could see her a little bit in case she needed to give a thumbs up or wave her hand really high, since we can only do like nose up.
So the next.
I'm good, don't worry.
On page 16, I see a total increase in FTE proposed to previous year adopted of 15.04, but on page 6, it appears that there are only 4.125 FTE.
Where am I not connecting the dots?
Great question, and I pulled this down. So you see here the adopted FTE is 190, which is what we're working with right now, based upon the FTE that we added, is 203.
Okay.
So that is, you're
is just-
correct, it is the difference. We didn't bring forward all the 203 because some of them were temporary positions, so that's why you don't get 203 plus the 4.125 equals 205.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yes.
Thank you, though,
Yeah.
for bringing it up. Can you push enter, please? The next question was total special revenue fund increase of 4 million compared to previous year adopted. And you mentioned that this was partly due to some of the additional fundings. And just your question, and I may need a little more information on this if I did not answer your question right. But what I'm seeing is the reason for the increase is for a few reasons. First of all, SIA was only budgeted at 70% last year, and it's fully funded at 100% this year.
Okay.
ESSER 3 was not budgeted at all last year. So we are budgeting the remaining of that into going in next year. And then we also still have some one-time grants for this year that we are anticipating getting. And that is some of them, but not all of them, is the summer school grant and the recruit and retain grant. So that is why the majority of the increase.
Perfect.
Can you push enter, please?
Sorry, you're probably
Okay.
gonna tell me every time.
Yeah, and that's all the questions that I had.
Thank you, Christy.
Thank you.
Did anybody else have any questions? great discussion along the way. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. So then I think, Helena, I know, we see you. You'll have to yell at us if you have any questions.
No, I'm good, but thank you. Sorry if you can't hear me very well.
Get well soon.
Yes.
Told me she sounds worse than she
She feels. Okay.
Yes.
I'm glad. That's good. That's good.
We should have had her sing the Pledge of Allegiance to get us started.
Okay, so I guess if there's no additional questions, Budget Committee, do you guys will, have anything you want to deliberate on?
I think I'm okay.
Everybody feeling okay?
To explain Exhibit A? here?
Yep. Okay, so let me go over into Exhibit A. This is just the reading part of it, where when you determine who's moved, you're doing two different things. You're motioning to approve the proposed budget, and then you're also motioning to approve our tax rate. And then if you push enter, please, someone. These are our appropriation levels for our proposed budget, and this is what you could bring forward to the board for adoption, if you approve.
This is all on the piece of paper we have in front of us.
And you're the only one that has that. It's the same paper that was in your packet last time, so you have it from last time, but yours is dated correctly today.
Where is it at in our packet?
It should be in the front folders.
Like in the front envelope.
Lindsay, I
Yep.
think that's.
Oh, thank you.
Yep,
On the left-hand side?
yep.
For those that remembered their,
What was the tax rate last year?
It is the exact same.
Okay.
We keep it the same.
Okay.
Yep, unless we move forward with a different bond.
Any, want to take some time to look at that?
Are there any plans for another bond coming forward anytime soon, hopefully?
Great question. That is our hopes. We're hoping to have stuff gathered and information for the November of '23.
We're optimistic for that time.
That's my hope. Okay, let me say that. That's my hope.
oh, boy.
Best case scenario.
Yep. We're going to pull again here soon, our community, and once we see something around 50 to 55% is when we'll probably start going. Yeah.
I think I'll go ahead and then move forward to see if anybody wants to put a motion out there for approval.
I'll put a motion out to approve the budget. Do I have to say be it moved?
Yes.
Be it moved that the budget committee best Case School District provide, oh, I don't approve it though. I put a motion to approve the 22-23 proposed budget in the sum of $58,967,077.
Can we do them all three at the same time?
Uh-huh.
Do you want to also motion the other?
Sure.
Thanks.
Thanks for volunteering.
Be it moved that requirement for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2022, and for the purposes shown below are hereby approved to be appropriated, provided, however, that the sum of the appropriations is limited to available resources. Be it moved a tax rate of 4.1476 per $1,000 in assessed value in support of the general fund, and two, a tax amount of $2,457,895 in support of the debt service fund.
And I just want to clarify the two portions, the tax rate, one, that is your personal that's part of it. And the second part is our debt payment. So the first part goes to the state. The second part comes directly to us to pay for our bond that we currently have. So just kind of showing you that first part, how that works.
Thank you, Jody, for that motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Carol. Any discussion? No, so guess we'll go ahead and move on to a vote. Raise of hands. Everybody in favor? Helena, also thank you.
Motion carries.
Awesome. Do I do anything else now? Recess, adjourn. We're not going to recess.
Christina's big
we're
old
adjourn.
grin over
Yep.
here.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you, guys. And I know know that this is an extra meeting for all of you, so I appreciate you letting me take the time to ask
Well-
Christina a bunch of questions.
I would just like to thank everyone for their service and great questions. Thank you so much. Thank you for grilling us in the front end. Really appreciate that. And the questions that you submitted were also very thoughtful. And I think this is my fourth budget, and this was by far the most thorough that we've done. And just to have someone new come in and always look at our finances, I think is healthy across the board. But I will tell you without equivocation that this has been the best budget committee that we've had. So thank you, and I hope that you'll continue to be a part of it for years to come. It will make us better. So thank you.
Thanks for the hat and the keychain.
Yes.
Gavel away
Thank you.
there, Lindsay.